What's going on, everybody? Preacher Reads here, and it's Valentine's Day, so that means we're going to talk about my top 10 favorite fantasy romance. Hold on, I gotta take that. 1 second, it's my producer. Yeah, man.
You can't do a video on romantasy and romance novels.
Okay.
Dude, you have never even read a romantasy novel. The book you have on the shelf behind you, you've never touched.
I understand.
All right, well, what we're going to do is you're going to pivot.
You're probably
right. On horror books because,
all right, thanks for looking out.
That's all you really know.
What's up, everybody? Preacher Reads here, and today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite weird and horrifying books that I think you should check out. These are in no specific order. I'm going to talk a little bit about them, and you're also going to hear a disembodied preacher voice tell you a little bit about what you'd find on the back cover, just so you can decide if it's something you would be interested in. So let's get started with number 1. First off, we've got The Great and Secret Show by Clive Barker.
Memory, prophecy, and fantasy. The past, the future, and the dreaming moment between are all one country living one immortal day. To know that is wisdom. To use it is the art. Armageddon begins with a murder in the dead letter office in Omaha. A lake that has never existed falls from the clouds of Palamo Grove, California. Young passion blossoms as the world withers with war. The great and secret show has begun on the stage of the world, and soon the final curtain must fall.
Now, you've probably heard about Clive Barker before. He's got some famous books and novellas that have been turned into some movies, and this is definitely one of his less popular works, but I thought it was so weird. I'm telling you, such a unique setting for a horror novel. Almost has a fantasy vibe within there as well. Some cosmic conflict going on in the midst of a just genuinely weird story. And Clive's ability to weave a narrative together and his prose are both fantastic. I think one of the best parts about Clive Barker is that he writes horror that fantasy fans seem to really be able to get into. And so, if you haven't checked out The Great and Secret Show by Clive Barker, you need to do it. Next up, we've got The Deep by Nick Cutter.
A strange plague called the Gets is decimating humanity on a global scale. It causes people to forget small things at first, like where they left their keys, then the not so small things like how to drive or the letters of the alphabet. Then their bodies forget how to function involuntarily, and there is no cure. But now, far below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, deep in the Marianas Trench, an heretofore unknown substance hailed as ambrosia has been discovered, a universal healer from initial reports. It might just be the key to the universal cure. In order to study this phenomenon, a special research lab, the Trieste, has been built 8 miles under the sea surface. But now the station is incommunicado, and it's up to a brave few to descend through the lightless fathoms in hopes of unraveling the mysteries lurking at these crushing depths, and perhaps to encounter an evil blacker than anything you could imagine.
Now, Nick Cutter is a staple in the horror genre, but I chose The Deep over his other books because this is definitely, in my opinion, his weirdest and most horrifying. The horror in this doesn't have to do as much with body horror, as much with creepy crawlies, as this ominous dread that comes from considering what could be in the places that we have never been before. If you love cosmic horror, or you just love that sense of foreboding in your novels, you need to check out The Deep by Nick Cutter. Next up, we've got The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins.
Carolyn's not so different from the other beings around her. She's sure of it. She likes guacamole and cigarettes and steak. She knows how to use a phone. She even remembers what clothes are for. After all, she was a normal American herself. Once. That was a long time ago, of course, before the time she calls Adoption Day, when she and a dozen other children found themselves being raised by a man they learned to call Father. Father could do strange things. He can call light from darkness. Sometimes he raised the dead. And when he was disobeyed, the consequences were terrible. In the years since Father took her in, Carolyn hasn't gotten out much. Instead, she and her adopted siblings have been raised according to Father's ancient Palapi customs. They've studied the books in his library and learned some of the secrets behind his equally ancient power. Sometimes They've wondered if their cruel tutor might secretly be God. Now, Father is missing. And if God truly is dead, the only thing that matters is who will inherit this library, and with it, the power over all creation.
Now, the library at Mount Char has been talked about on BookTube recently by a few creators that I've watched, and they loved it, and we loved it too when we read it for our book club last year in 9 Realms. And you talk about weird. You talk about scary, but in very unique ways. This story follows such a unique cast and does it in such a way that, man, I don't think I've ever experienced before. It's not going to be for everyone. It's definitely not as straightforward as some people like their horror, but I thought it was awesome. Again, another book that I don't even really want to spoil at all for you. I just want you to experience it. Experience the weird of the library at Mount Char. Next up, we've got The Dinner by Herman Koch.
It's a summer's evening in Amsterdam, and 2 couples meet at a fashionable restaurant for dinner. Between mouthfuls of food and over the polite scrapings of cutlery, the conversation remains the gentle hum of polite discourse, the banality of work, the triviality of the holidays, but behind the empty words, terrible things need to be said. And with every forced smile and every new course, the knives are being sharpened. Each couple has a 15-year-old son. The 2 boys are united by their accountability for a single horrific act, an act that has triggered a police investigation and shattered the comfortable, insulated worlds of their families. As the dinner reaches its culinary climax, the conversation finally touches on their children. As civility and friendship disintegrate, each couple show just how far they're prepared to go to protect those they love.
Now, I don't want to give away any more than is already given away on the back cover of this book because it's a different type of weird. It's a different type of horrifying. There is no supernatural element to The Dinner, but I'm telling you, you're going to be creeped out beyond belief. Check out The Dinner. Enjoy the story for what it is. Make sure that you get past halfway before you decide if it's for you or not, because this book just dives off a cliff in the second half. I loved The Dinner. It's gotten a little popular. It did have, I believe, a movie adaptation, but the book is where it's at. Check out The Dinner by Herman Koch. Next up, we've got Penpal by Dathan Auerbach.
In Penpal, a man investigates the seemingly unrelated, bizarre, tragic, and horrific occurrences of his childhood in an attempt to finally understand them. Beginning with only fragments of his earliest years, you'll follow the narrator as he discovers that these strange and horrible events are actually part of a single, terrifying story that shaped the entirety of his life and the lives of those around him. If you've ever stayed in the woods just a little too long after dark, if you ever had the feeling that someone or something was trying to hurt you, if you remember the first friend you ever made and how strong that bond was, then Penpal is a story you won't soon forget, despite how you might try.
I tell you what, Penpal is creepy. This was probably one of the first horror novels that I read that was not a major release by a traditional publisher, and it did not disappoint. It is weird. It does time lapse. It does some jumps and some cuts that are definitely not for everyone. But if you are looking for a non-straightforward horror novel that really is going to push some boundaries for you, Penpal by Dathan Auerbach is a cult classic at this point in the horror community for a reason. Now let's talk about quite possibly the second weirdest book I have ever read, and that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid.
I'm thinking of ending things. Once this thought arrives, it stays. It sticks. It lingers. It's always there. Always. Jake once said, sometimes a thought is closer to truth, to reality, than an action. You can say anything. You can do anything, but you can't fake a thought. And here's what I'm thinking. I don't want to be here.
All I have to say about I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid is, I mean, this book is creepy. This book is confusing in all the right ways. And until the last page, you have no clue what is actually happening. And it works so well. I have not seen the adaptation, don't know if it was faithful or not, but I know that this is another cult classic in the horror genre when it comes to weird and different. You've never read a book like I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. After that Ian Reid novel, we need to get a little bit more lighthearted, and that is definitely John Dies at the End.
Stop. You should not have touched this flyer with your bare hands. No, don't put it down. It's too late now. They're watching you. My name is David Wong. My best friend is John. Those names are fake. You might want to change yours. You may not want to know about the things you'll read on these pages, about the sauce, about Karak, about the invasion and the future. But it's too late. You touched the book. You're in the game. You're under the eye. The only defense now is knowledge. You need to read this book to the end, even the part with the bratwurst. Why? You just have to trust me. The important thing is this: the drug is called soy sauce, and it gives users a window into another dimension. John and I never had the chance to say no, but you still do. I'm sorry to have involved you in this. I really am. But as you read about these terrible events and the dark epoch the world is about to enter as a result, it is crucial you keep one thing in mind. None of this was my fault.
What would it be like if you blended cosmic horror, real good cosmic horror, with satire, over-the-top characters, and over-the-top action? That is John Dies at the End, and the sequels are really good too. This book is such a cool palate cleanser. It does horror very well. It does mystery very well, but it also does funny very well. It does over-the-top very well, and the action sequences are actually fantastic. I thought that this book was a gem, another one that many people within the horror genre view as something that is a must read. It also got an adaptation. I thought the movie was fantastic as well, but you have to be in that mood. If you're ready for something super serious, super deep, that is thematic in ways that is going to blow your mind and change your life, John Dies at the End is not the book for you. But if you just want weird, funny, but also horrifying, John Dies at the End is an awesome book to check out. Another weird and horrifying book that has no supernatural elements is You by Carolyn Kepnes.
When a beautiful, aspiring writer strides into the East Village bookstore where Joe Goldberg works, he does what anyone would do. He Googles the name on her credit card. There is only one Guinevere Beck in New York City. She has a public Facebook account and tweets incessantly, telling Joe everything he needs to know. She simply becked to her friends. She went to Brown University. She lives on Bank Street, and she'll be at a bar in Brooklyn tonight. The perfect place for a chance meeting. As Joe invisibly and obsessively takes control of Beck's life, he orchestrates a series of events to ensure Beck finds herself in his waiting arms. Moving from stalker to boyfriend, Joe transforms himself into Beck's perfect man, all while quietly removing the obstacles that stand in their way, even if it means murder.
Now, You is a pretty popular series on Netflix, but I'm telling you, the book is even better. If you think Joe is weird in the show, he's even creepier in the books. And in my opinion, everyone else within the story is better in the books than in the show. That's where I thought the show started to fall apart for me. And in the books, it is nailed. It's not just about Joe, it's about everybody else too. They're just as awful, they're just as creepy, they're just as weird. And overall, this is probably one of the creepiest stories I've ever read that has no supernatural elements at all. Check out You, especially this Valentine's Day. Next up, we've got the son of the man of horror himself, and that is Joe Hill with Nosferatu. Victoria
McQueen has a secret gift for finding things. A misplaced bracelet, a missing photograph, answers to unanswerable questions. On her Raleigh Tough Burner bike, she makes her way to a rickety covered bridge that within moments takes her wherever she needs to go, whether it's across Massachusetts or across the country. Charles Talent Manx has a way with children. He likes to take them for rides in his 1938 Rolls-Royce Wraith with the Nosferatu vanity plate. With his old car, he can slip right out of the everyday world and onto the hidden roads that transport them to an astonishing and terrifying playground of amusements he calls Christmas Land. Then one day, Vic goes looking for trouble and finds Manx. That was a lifetime ago. Now Vic, the only kid to ever escape Manx's unmitigated evil, is all grown up and desperate to forget. But Charlie Manx never stopped thinking about Victoria McQueen. He's on the road again, and he's picked up a new passenger, Vic's own son.
Joe Hill has made Christmas creepy with Nosferatu, one of the coolest plays on vampires I've ever read in a story. Nosferatu is awesome. It's weird. It takes you places you never think that you would want to go, but when he goes there, you're like, wow, this is such a good choice. The protagonists are fantastic, but it's the antagonists in Nosferatu that I think steals the show, as well as some of the settings of the book that I think are top notch. If you like King, if you've never read Joe Hill, or if you just want a really creepy, straightforward horror novel, Nosferatu is the way to go. Next up, we have one of my current favorite horror authors, and that is Chuck Wendig with the Book of Accidents.
Long ago, Nathan lived in a house in the country with his abusive father and has never told his family what happened there. Long ago, Maddie was a little girl making dolls in her bedroom when she saw something she shouldn't have and is trying to remember that lost trauma by making haunting sculptures. Long ago, something sinister, something hungry, walked into the tunnels and the mountains and the coal mines of their hometown in rural Pennsylvania. Now Nate and Maddie Graves are married, and they have moved back to their hometown with their son, Oliver. And now what happened long ago is happening again, and it is happening to Oliver. He meets a strange boy who becomes his best friend, a boy with secrets of his own and a taste for dark magic. And this dark magic puts them at the heart of a battle for good versus evil and a fight for the soul of the family, and perhaps for all of the world. But the Graves family has a secret weapon in this battle, their love for one another.
The Book of Accidents is another one that I don't want to give away any more than I have to by reading the back cover. The Book of Accidents is such a cool plot. It is more straightforward on the horror side, but it's creepy because of just all of the different elements that Chuck nails in regards to his characters, his setting, the horrific elements that he's going to just seep into the story as you go along. You begin one place thinking you may get here, but instead you get much bigger, much creepier, much weirder by the end of the story. Chuck is a fantastic horror author, and I believe he does some Star Wars stuff as well, but man, the Book of Accidents is a creepy, weird, awesome ride. All right, we are down to our final two, and you know that I can't talk about weird without talking about House of Leaves.
A young family moves into a small home on Ash Tree Lane, where they discover something is terribly wrong. Their house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Of course, neither Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Will Davidson nor his companion Karen Green was prepared to face the consequences of that impossibility, until the day their two little children wandered off and their voices eerily began to return another story of creature darkness, of an ever-growing abyss behind a closet door, and of that unholy growl which soon enough would tear through their walls and consume all their dreams.
Now, House of Leaves is a cult classic in the horror community, but I'm surprised at the amount of fantasy readers who have never really heard of or dove in to House of Leaves, that still have it on their TBR or don't even know about it. This is the weirdest story I have ever read. I can't even begin to describe the experience. If you look inside the book, you will see, but I don't even want to give that away to you. I just want you to pick it up. I want you to experience it for yourself. You may hate it, but you'll finish it saying, I experienced something I have never experienced before. House of Leaves was such a game changer in the horror community for a reason. Now, it is divisive about whether or not it works, but I thought it did. And I think even if it doesn't for you, you'll be better off finishing it and saying, I did House of Leaves. I finished it. I experienced it. And here's what I think. Check out House of Leaves. I think you should. And last but not least, you know I had to include the king of horror himself, and that is Stephen King and his creepiest book, Revival.
In a small New England town, over half a century ago, a shadow falls over a small boy playing with his toy soldiers. Jamie Morton looks up to see a striking man, the new minister. Charles Jacobs, along with his beautiful wife, will transform the local church. The men and boys are all a bit in love with Miss Jacobs, and the women and girls feel the same about the Reverend, including Jamie's mother and beloved sister Claire. With Jamie, the Reverend shares a deeper bond based on a secret obsession. When tragedy strikes the Jacobs family, this charismatic preacher curses God, mocks all religious belief, and is banished from the shocked town. Jamie has demons of his own. Wed to his guitar from the age of 13, he plays in bands across the country, living the nomadic lifestyle of bar band rock and roll while fleeing from his family's horrific loss. In his mid-30s, addicted to heroin, stranded, and desperate, Jamie meets Charles Jacobs again, with profound consequences for both of them. Their bond becomes a pact beyond even the devil's devising, and Jamie discovers that revival has many meanings.
Now, this is King we're talking about here. I could have included 15 of his novels in this video, but I chose Revival because I think it's one that is overlooked as it's a little bit newer, but it's loved by Stephen King fans, and it is weird. It is horrifying. It takes things to a place that you would never have expected, and King nails the ending. And he nails the ending by being weird, not by doing something that you probably would have expected him to do. He flips that switch and goes to a place that was probably dangerous for him to go to, but he nails it. I'm telling you, you should check out Revival by Stephen King. There's a reason why it is beloved in the fantasy community by people who primarily read epic fantasy, who have dove into King and love this book. You should read Revival. I'm telling you, it's great. All right, that's my list for today, guys. Thank you all so much for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you put some more books on your TBR because of this video. If you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. If you want to support even farther, you can find my Amazon wish list in the description. And for every 3 books that are purchased from that, every book is self-pub, by the way, I will do a self-published giveaway. That way we can continue to support self-published authors, and that way I can continue to really push forward at reviewing and consuming and talking about self-published content. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope you have a great day.